the medical management of Angstmon, the most important change that has occurred in the last, let's say, 15 years, 10 to 15 years in the management of ankylosing spondylitis is to find out which domain is active in a particular patient. It may not be just one, it may be a combination. So I've just put it up here, and for this talk we'll mainly be talking about the articular domains. I'm not going into the extra-articular, but they also might determine what kind of medications you use. It's very important to know that Angstmon, you need to know the domain. If there is one take-home statement I'm making, please, for every patient with ankylosing, find out what is the articular and extra-articular domain that is there. The articular domain, I'll show you this. In contradistinction to rheumatoid, where the main pathology in the joint is synovitis, in ankylosing, there are three major pathologies which are there, which can be found when you do an MRI imaging. One is synovitis, yes, but there's something called enthesitis, which is not seen in rheumatoid. And there's something called bone marrow edema, wherein it's non-infectious edema, osteitis as it is called, and which can also produce a lot of pain. So in every patient with Angstmon with peripheral arthritis or a spondyloarthropathy, look for which of these three is there to then formulate your management. That's the first and important thing that I'm telling you. So I'm just giving you a few examples. This was one of our liftmen in Hinduja who had ankylosing, and he came with a very bad ankle pain, and I got an MRI done, and this MRI shows all three. It shows Achilles tendonitis, it shows the osteitis, it also shows the synovitis. So all three pathologies were seen. May not be seen in all, but what I'm trying to say is the interplay of all three is the cause of the pain, and you'll need to know which one is that. And this is cervical spine. It is said that cervical spine is definitely more common in rheumatoid, although the incidence is going down with aggressive therapy. But spondylos are not uncommon with cervical spine. And again, there, you will need to know what is the pathology that is taking place in that particular patient. For example, in the atlantoaxial joint, as you can see here in the anatomy, you can get a synovitis and a pannus around the dens. But at the same time, you can also where this alar ligament and the transverse ligament of atlas are attaching, you can get nice fluffy periostitis. You can see that in that CT scan, they see that periostitis there. So therefore, and in fact, if you do a proper MRI, you can also pick up the facetal involvement in these patients. So therefore, whether it is the synovitis, whether it is periostitis, whether it is the involvement of the facetal joints, if you know that from very beginning, you can modify therapy. For example, the synovitis might work with steroids and methotrexate, whereas the facetal involvement and periosteal involvement may not. So therefore, you need to know what you need to give, because that first step of finding out what the domain is at each area that you are seeing will be useful. Now, this was a recent patient of ours of very, very severe ankylosing spondylitis with pubic symphysitis. It's a very, very painful condition. And lo and behold, she not only had inflammation where the muscles were getting inserted, but she also had osteitis. The bone was also inflamed. And then we read a little bit about it, and the amount of enthesial attachments near the pubic symphysis is so many that enthesitis may well be the major dominant feature there. So you need to know that. So for every joint that you encounter in Angstmon, you need to know the domain. Is it synovitis? Is it enthesitis, or is it bone edema, bone marrow edema that's causing the problem? And MRI is a very good way of finding that out. Medical management is management of the pain and then the disease modification. Both of them you need to know. Pain management, I don't have to tell the august audience here what about that. But important thing is they usually seem to have more pain than rheumatoid. They're much more painful, they last longer, they complain more than rheumatoids. And the reason could be that apart from involvement of the synovium, they also have enthesis and bone edema. Usually if you see a peripheral arthritis of rheumatoid, only the PIP and MCP will be swollen. But if you see a dactylitis of a spondylo, even the intervening bone between the two joints are very tender. So they have a periostitis there. Even clinically, you can pick it up and modify your treatment. Central sensitization plays a part in both, but more so in spondylo than in rheumatoid. Sleep deprivation and other things may also be worsening the pain. Anti-inflammatories do work, and they're not that they should be used, but long-acting preferred because they take care of the night pain and the morning stiffness. Importantly, a flare of sacroiliitis takes easily 4 to 6 weeks to settle down. So many times what we see in the clinic is that it's anti-inflammatories are given for only 2 weeks and then stopped, and again the pain comes back, again it started. They feel that the earlier anti-inflammatories not worked, the anti-inflammatory switched. So if you know that there is a good going sacroiliac flare that has occurred in a patient with a known spondylo, Do not move from the NSAID, especially young person where there are no contraindications for an anti-inflammatory. Give it for a period of 4 weeks before you taper it, because otherwise it will recur. It takes that much time for it to really go down. And can add analgesics to the NSAID. Start physio as soon as possible. Many physiotherapists don't give physio until the pain is completely gone. That is not the way to take care of inflammatory arthritis. That may be true in other orthopedic conditions, but not in inflammatory arthritis. The more mobile they are, the better. And a lot of pain is coming from musculature and inactivity rather than apart from the inflammation that is there. So get them to move as soon as pain relief comes down. Systemic steroid is of less help than rheumatoid. Intra-articular definitely has been given if one peripheral joint is swollen. Lesional ones are beneficial, but you have to be very careful with the Achilles tendon and plantar fascia, lest that you give it into that and cause a rupture. So we have had a few with that, so you have to be extremely careful when you do these intra-lesional ones. I'm just put this up. We all know all the anti-inflammatories, but just to say that sometimes we don't give the full doses. For example, if you take the ibuprofen, the full dose of ibuprofen is 2,400. We go much less than that and then say that it's not working. There is no one drug which is better than the other. Long-acting diclofenac, indomethacin are as good as the new ones like etoricoxib. Etoricoxib produces a lot of fluid retention. Have to be very careful in the middle-aged and elderly who have other comorbidities, especially like hypertension. It causes a lot of edema, etc. So the older ones also work. You might have to give a PPI, which somebody is talking about, but it does work, and you have to give it for a reasonable period of time. So this is a very important slide. I think one of the take-homes here, wherein the domains are given here and which are the drugs which act on them I've given here. Anti-inflammatories are good for peripheral synovitis, axial, but when it comes to something like dactylitis and enthesitis also it helps, but probably a little less. Conventional DMARDs, I see a lot of salazopyrines being given for axial spondylosis, the ones who just have sacroiliac. The evidence is very small. It's not that good at all so therefore if it's not helping, you will have to think of other drugs which I'll think about. But salazopyrin, methotrexate, leflunomide, all the disease modifying agents which are used in rheumatoid are good for peripheral arthritis in spondylosis and not the axial ones. Axial, somehow the efficacy is not as good as peripheral joints. JAK2 inhibitors and biologics have come as a big boon for spondylo, much more than rheumatoid. I would stick my neck out and say that this is the bang for buck is much more in spondylos. And as you can see, peripheral synovitis, it takes care of the axial part, it takes care of the dactylitis and enthesitis. So do biologics. So both these are there. Of the two, I would probably go for this first because it's inexpensive and then go into the biologics nowadays. We didn't have this about, let's say, 6, 7, 8 years ago. We only had, after anti-inflammatories didn't work, we used to have to go to biologics. So this has come as a via media. We are using the tofacitinibs and baricitinibs a little more now and getting reasonable efficacy with them. And this is again that huge slide of all the drugs, all the biologics that have been used, and a little bit more in spondylo than in rheumatoid. The very fact that there are so many that we know that we are nowhere near the truth as far as the treatment goes. There is no one drug which is going to give us a cure. I don't think it will do in our lifetime. But the drugs that are commonly used are the TNF blockers, adalimumab, infliximab, and then you come down here. Secukinumab is more used probably in psoriatic arthritis. Again, here you see the JAK inhibitors, tofacitinib and baricitinib. These two are available in India, and tofacitinib is probably being used more. So these are all given in in cases where anti-inflammatories you have given. For example, if I have an ankylosing spondylitis with only sacroiliac and lumbosacral involvement, there is no peripheral arthritis. I have given reasonable anti-inflammatory agents for 6 to 8 weeks. He's not able to taper it at all. They are the ones in whom we'll be thinking of all this, not from day one. And that proportion is, I would say, 30%. 60% would respond to your anti-inflammatories, analgesics, physiotherapy, vitamin D, etc., and come off it and maintain a life with exercises. So we also need to know of the other causes of pain in these patients, very important. Spinal instability pain, which we come across and often treated with more and more biologics, and it doesn't help. The characteristic of the pain and the history itself should make you differentiate between spinal instability pain, and I refer them to Samir and his colleagues, and they do a good job of fixing them and really giving them relief. Fractures can occur, although it looks very solid as far as the bone. They are very osteoporotic, and fractures are a problem. Secondary infections can also occur because they're all on drugs which can reduce your immunity and cause infections. So sudden increase in pain in a patient with angstpon need not be a flare all the time, especially if it is localized and has a mechanical quality to it rather than an inflammatory quality. That is, morning stiffness is not there. And secondary fibromyalgia. So these are just some cases where there is a fracture here. So other causes we have finished. Sorry, I'm going backwards, sorry. So this is a patient with port spine. This was one of those who had the discitis there, as you can see. So medical management, the conclusions are, think of articular domain in a particular patient. So I think that's something new that we are doing, and we don't hesitate to get MRIs done of a particular part. Supposing an angstpond has come with a shoulder, I get an MRI done. I know that I can start medications without it, but that gives me a better idea whether it's enthesitis, just synovitis, what is happening there, which drug would give him better. Axial and appendicular ankylosing spondylitis which don't respond to NSAIDs, that are of high inflammatory burden, need aggressive therapy with either adding a tofacitinib or thinking of biologics earlier. Salazopyrin is very, very mild. Other DMARDs are useful for peripheral arthritis. They are not good for enthesitis. They are not that good for bone marrow edema. Axial disease, NSAIDs, JAK2 and biologics. Appendicular, again NSAIDs. Intra-arterial steroids, it's just one joint or so, and JAK2 and biologics. So these two, JAK2 and biologics, have really made the life easier for very bad angstsponds. We didn't have data to know whether biologics really reduce the syndesmophyte formation earlier. Maybe 10 years ago we didn't have, but last 10 years there are enough studies that if you use it for more than 4 years, you start seeing the beneficial effect of prevention of syndesmophytes, which is what you want to do. The idea is to control the inflammation and prevent the adverse outcomes of the inflammation eventually. Thank you very much.